The fluorescent lights in the conference room buzzed like a dying insect, casting a sterile glow over the polished table where my career was about to be euthanized. Cheryl, the HR rep with a face as expressive as a DMV clerk, stared at her clipboard, her pen clicking rhythmically like she was marking time at a funeral. "I'm sorry, Nancy," she said, her voice flat, avoiding my gaze, "but effective immediately, your position has been eliminated." The words landed like a sucker punch, but it was David, my boss of 6 soul-crushing years, who twisted the knife. He sat across from me, his lips curled into a smirk that screamed he'd just pulled off a heist and was already counting the loot. His tie, a garish blue thing dotted with tiny white sailboats, hung crooked, like he fancied himself a regatta captain instead of the corporate pirate who'd just sunk my livelihood. A week before bonuses. 7 measly days. I'd been with this company for over a decade, chaining myself to 12-hour days, sacrificing weekends like they were kindling for a fire I didn't even get to sit by. I'd seen the bonus spreadsheet, numbers don't lie, unlike David. I was in for at least $40,000, money already spent in my head on hospital bills piling up from mom's chemo and a roof repair before winter turned her house into a snow globe. But David, with his restructuring buzzword, had other plans. Restructuring, I learned, was code for purging anyone with a pulse and a paycheck bigger than his assistant's coffee budget. I stood, my jaw clenched so tight I could have ground my teeth into dust, and asked, "No severance?" My voice was calm, too calm, the kind of polite that made me want to scream at myself. Cheryl chirped, "Standard package. 3 weeks and a positive reference, assuming no complications." Like I was a cavity she was filling, not a 48-year-old woman she was tossing into the void. "Oh, I wouldn't dream of complicating your little bonus bacchanal," I snapped, snatching my bag with hands that felt brittle as porcelain. "Hey, if you're already gripping your phone like it's your last lifeline, do me a solid, hit that like button and subscribe." I'm grinding toward my first 10,000 subscribers, clawing my way up like a raccoon in a dumpster fire, and every click is a spark of hope. Let's show these corporate vultures the algorithm bites back. I didn't cry, not in that room. I marched out, spine straight, through an office suddenly obsessed with their keyboards and coffee stains. My desk, now a ghost town, waited like an open grave. I started packing, a photo of mom from before the cancer stole her hair, 3 mugs, 1 chipped, 1 stained, 1 with "World's Okayest Employee" scrawled on it, a dozen sticky notes with passwords that were now as useless as my keycard. I didn't bother with the papers, just swept them into a cardboard box like I was erasing a crime scene. The elevator ride down felt like a descent into Hades, the music mocking me with its cheerful indifference. It wasn't until I was home, 2 glasses of cheap Merlot deep, face buried in a microwaved quesadilla, that it hit me. The bottom drawer of my desk, the one I ignored unless the printer threw a tantrum or someone swiped my good pen, held something I'd forgotten about. There, wedged between a dusty ergonomic mouse and a stress ball shaped like the company's cartoonish mascot, was my original employment contract, still in its envelope, my signature bold and naive from 2016. I unfolded it like it was a relic from a lost civilization, the legalese a maze of fine print. And then, on page 6, section 12b, buried under a wall of termination jargon, I saw it. If the employee is terminated without cause, she shall be entitled to 10% of the company's net quarterly profit in the quarter of termination, in lieu of standard bonus and severance. I read it again, my pulse hammering. 10%. Not of my department's budget, not of some capped bonus pool, but of the entire company's quarterly profit. I laughed, a wild, unhinged cackle, spraying wine across my couch. I coughed on a chunk of cheese, tears streaming, because they thought they'd buried me, but I'd planted a landmine years ago. Back when the company had a shred of integrity, when the CEO still shook hands with grunts like me, I'd negotiated that clause. It was meant for executives, a golden parachute for the C-suite, but in those early days, they'd let me slip it in after I'd single-handedly secured a billion-dollar safety compliance deal. David, of course, never read it. The man couldn't even navigate a takeout menu without someone circling the specials. And now, that clause was a guillotine, and his neck was on the block. They didn't owe me $40,000. They didn't even owe me $100,000. No, sweetheart, they owed me millions. If they wanted to play dirty, I'd bring a wrecking ball to their boardroom. Monday morning, I strode into the grimy office of Greg Fisk, a lawyer Yelp reviews called a shark in a thrift store suit. The place reeked of stale coffee and ink, a perfect match for my mood. Greg was a wiry man, short, with a tie that looked like it had been tie-dyed in a paper shredder and eyes that gleamed like he hadn't slept since the Clinton era. He didn't waste time on pleasantries, just gestured to a chair buried under files, a half-eaten BLT, and what I swore was a slingshot. So, he said, flipping through my contract, they fired you a week before bonuses, no cause given? I nodded, mimicking Cheryl's air quotes. Corporate restructuring. Greg whistled, low and sharp, like he'd just spotted a jackpot. He tapped the clause with a pen that looked like he'd nodded in court. This is bulletproof. 10% of quarterly profit, no wiggle room. They signed it when they still believed in karma. His grin was feral. They're toast. I exhaled, a full breath for the first time since Friday, but Greg held up a hand. Here's the catch, they'll never admit it was without cause. They'll say you were a problem, insubordinate, whatever garbage they can spin to dodge this. My stomach twisted. I could already hear David's voice, slick as oil. Nancy was a disruption, low morale, missed targets. All lies, but lies stick when they come from a corner office. They'll fabricate evidence, I said, voice low. Greg nodded. Probably already have. Expect emails they found, performance reviews you never saw, maybe warnings you didn't sign. They'll make you look like a walking HR violation. I gripped the arms of the chair. What now? He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. We get ahead of them. You gather proof, emails from your team, client praise, awards, anything that shows you were their golden child. Make it impossible to paint you as dead weight. And find motive. If you can prove they axed you to pad their bonuses, that's your dagger. I left his office not with vengeance, but with a scalpel's focus. They wanted a fight? I'd give them a dissection. Mariah was my inside woman. We met at our old Thai spot, a dive where the pad CEW was cheap and the booths were private. She was already there, clutching a glass of water like it held classified intel. Her eyes flared when she saw me, not with warmth but with barely contained fury. They said you quit, she hissed before I could sit. Like you just got tired and walked out a week before bonuses. Nobody's buying it. I slid into the booth. David's his spin, is it? Has he already turned my desk into his personal yoga studio? Mariah's laugh was sharp. Yoga? He's redecorated it with his ego and a coffee machine that costs more than my rent. I smirked, but it didn't reach my heart. He thinks I'm done, that I'll slink off to LinkedIn with a new opportunities post and call it a day. Mariah leaned in, voice dropping. You're not. Not even close, I said. She exhaled, like she'd been waiting for me to say it. Good, because I've got dirt. David's been gloating about how streamlined the team looks, how much bloat he cut before Q3 earnings. That bloat? You, 2 PMs, 1 HR guy, and Gerald from compliance. I blinked. Gerald? The guy who color-coded his inbox? Yep. No warning, just a pat on the back and a cardboard box. I leaned back, the pieces clicking together. So they're slashing headcount right before bonuses, cooking the books to look lean. Mariah's eyes darted around, then locked on mine. And there's more. That Apex deal, the RFP we bled for, the one you lived on granola bars and dry shampoo to win? I nodded, my throat tight. We closed it. I froze. No announcement? Not public yet, she said, but David's already baked it into Q3 projections. It's huge, Nancy. The profit margin's obscene. It's going to make Q3 look like a gold rush. My hands curled into fists. They fired me after I landed the deal that's funding their bonuses? Exactly, she said. Unannounced deal, inflated earnings, reduced payroll. It's a masterclass in avarice. I stared at my water, but I saw a balance sheet, my name crossed out, profits circled, David's signature scrawled like a victory lap. Can you get me proof? I asked. Emails, memos, anything? She nodded, somber. I'll be careful. Personal account, to you only. Her smirk returned. I've survived 2 layoffs and a trust fall with David. I know how to play spy. We paid in cash, left separately. As I walked to my car, something ignited inside me, not rage, but purpose. I called Greg. It's time, I said. He sent the letter that afternoon, certified mail, one line that flipped the board, per Section 12B. We request payment of 10% of net quarterly profit due to Ms. Nancy's termination without cause. The trap was set, and David didn't even know he was in the cage. 3 days later, their response arrived on letterhead so pretentious it could have been perfumed. Grayson and Howe, a firm that sounded like it charged by the syllable. Greg read it aloud in his office while I paced like a caged panther. Ms. Lawson's termination was for cause, supported by documented concerns regarding performance and conduct. I stopped dead. Keep reading, I said, my voice a blade. He scanned further. 3 written warnings, 2 performance plans, a final review, all signed by David. I grabbed the stack, my eyes locking on the first warning, dated June 10th. It claimed I'd derailed a team meeting, called David's strategy aimless, and undermined his authority. I remembered that day, I'd brought cupcakes to celebrate hitting a milestone early. I still had the email thread thanking me. And my signature? Nowhere. Just David's loopy scrawl on every page, the formatting so sloppy it looked like a rush job by someone who'd never heard of margins. Craig tapped the papers. If they prove cause, your clause is dead. You get nothing but a trashed reputation. I glared at the stack. They're forging records. This isn't just shady, it's illegal. Craig leaned back. Prove it. He wasn't being cruel, just real. I could scream innocence, but without evidence, I'd be buried under their legal avalanche. Then it hit me, David never wrote his own reviews. He'd email templates to his admin, barking orders to make it sound professional. If he'd forged these, he'd done it on his computer. Digital breadcrumbs. I texted Mariah, need original files, not PDFs, Word docs, from David's laptop or shared drive. Timestamps are everything. If those files were created after my firing, we'd have them cold. My blood simmered, not with anger but with precision. They thought I'd fold, that they could rewrite my story and call it history. But David forgot one thing, I kept receipts. For everything. Hey, if you're as fired up as I am right now, smash that subscribe button and drop a like. I'm spilling the tea on corporate con artists, and I need your support to keep the pot boiling. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, let's build a crew that fights back. Mariah's text pinged at 1:03 a.m., jolting me awake like a fire alarm. You're gonna owe me a spa day, it read, followed by 4 attachments. I sat up, my phone's glow casting shadows across my bedroom. Original Word docs, not PDFs, plucked from a shared drive folder David had named ExecVault 1. The man who couldn't unmute himself on Teams thought a number made him a cybersecurity genius. I opened the first file on my laptop. Date created, October 4th, 11:22 a.m. I was fired on October 3rd. Every document, every lie, was born after I was gone. I laughed, a raw, guttural sound that probably woke my neighbor's dog. I forwarded the files to Greg, then opened Mariah's next message, a spreadsheet labeled Q3 Forecast, Internal. It detailed every contract, including the Apex deal, my deal, unannounced but projected to push Q3 profit to $39.1 million. I did the math. 10%, $3.91 million. That wasn't a payout, that was a revolution. Mom's medical debt erased, the mortgage gone, every late-night panic attack paid in full. Greg called, voice buzzing. This is your Excalibur. Timestamps don't lie. If we waive this in court, they'll fold faster than a lawn chair in a hurricane. I stared at the numbers, my chest tight. They could have paid me clean, taken the hit. But they lied, and now I had the rope to string them up. Their next move came 2 days later, delivered by a courier who looked like he'd rather be serving jury duty. A thick envelope, reeking of corporate desperation. Inside, a 5-page settlement offer, $175,000, a one-time payout, no admission of fault, just a patronizing note about closure and mutual respect. Greg smirked, flipping through it like it was a comic book. They're terrified. They know we have something, just not how much. I nodded, my jaw set. Let's keep guessing. Then, like a gift from the universe, an email from Frank Ellis, a finance guy who'd never raised his voice louder than a whisper. He'd been fired after questioning Q3 earnings tweaks. His message was clipped, seething, heard about your exit. Got files you might want. They axed me for asking about Apex accounting. Coffee? We met at a greasy spoon off the freeway, Frank looking like he'd aged a decade. They fired me after I flagged the Apex entries, he said, his coffee untouched. Revenues booked in Q3, not deferred, to juice the numbers. He slid a flash drive across the table. Original projections, emails from the CFO ordering revisions. I backed it all up. My hands shook as I took it. This wasn't just my fight anymore, it was systemic rot. I sent the files to Greg that night. He scanned them, his voice low. This isn't a lawsuit, it's a war crime. If we leak this, the SEC's knocking. The CEO won't let that happen. I leaned back, my voice cold. Then we make him choose. We planned a meeting, one room, David, their legal team, us. Greg called it a negotiation. I called it an execution. The conference room was a sterile box, all glass and leather, designed to make you feel small. David sat across from me, fiddling with his cufflinks, avoiding my eyes like I was Medusa. The CEO, Richard Hale, was a glacier in a tailored suit, his presence sucking the air out. Greg sat beside me, calm as a monk, a legal pad scribbled with career-ending notes. Let's start, Greg said, sliding a USB across the table. Their lawyer, Elaine, plugged it in, her face tight. The screen lit up. Item 1, Greg said, performance records. 3 warnings, 1 PIP, 1 review, all dated pre-termination, all signed by David. David smirked, leaning back. As they should be. She was a liability. Greg raised a hand. No need for anecdotes. We have metadata. He clicked, showing a Word doc's properties. Date created, October 4th, 11:22 a.m. Ms. was fired October 3rd. This didn't exist until after. Nor did these. He cycled through, October 4th, all forged post-firing. Elaine shifted, Richard's eyes flicked to David, who shrank. Greg pressed on. Item 2, an affidavit from Frank Ellis, fired after questioning Apex revenue booking. It includes emails from your CFO ordering Q3 inflation to boost bonuses. Richard's jaw tightened. To recap, you fired my client after her deal spiked profits, forged records to dodge her claws, and fired another for exposing the math. Shall we continue? Elaine opened her mouth, but Richard cut her off. David, he said, voice like frost, you said this was clean. David stammered, I thought it was handled out, Richard snapped. David fled, knocking over his chair. The silence was exquisite. Richard turned to me. Privately? I nodded. The room cleared, leaving us alone, two wolves sizing each other up. He didn't bother with charm. You're not here to torch us. You're here for the money. I nodded once. Smart. He slid a folder across thin, precise. Full 10%, based on preliminary Q3, $3 million, wired in 3 days. I scanned it, spotting the NDA. And David? Gone. Breach of conduct, he said. I tapped the folder. 2 conditions. 1. Frank gets $500,000, consulting fee. 2. Mariah gets a glowing recommendation from you. Richard's eyes narrowed. You're protecting yours. No, I said, I'm gutting yours. Craig stifled a chuckle. Richard stood. My team finalizes by morning. We shook hands, his grip like iron, and I walked out feeling like I'd just looted a vault. Hey, if you're cheering for underdogs like me, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Let's show these suits we're a force. The wire hit at 10:15 a.m. Tuesday, $3.2 million, clean. I stared at my bank app, breathless, then paid off Mom's medical bills, the mortgage, every debt wiped like a stain. I called Mom, who answered, wary. Did you rob a bank? No, just squeezed a corporation till it screamed. She laughed. I wired Frank's fee, he cried, saying no one had ever had his back like that. Mariah got her letter, landing a job in days. They called me indispensable, she said over tie, grinning. I could have stopped, but some truths need daylight. One night, with champagne that cost more than my old rent, I posted a review on Glassdoor, beware restructurings before bonuses. Loyalties rewarded with silence, profits with pink slips. Leadership thrives on optics, not ethics, and accounting's a weapon. No names, just facts. It went viral, sparking LinkedIn DMs and a consulting offer I ignored. I was busy, sipping coffee on the deck of a beach house I'd bought cash, Mom on the phone, seagulls bickering in the distance. What's that sound? She asked. Freedom, I said, raising my glass. To reading the fine print. I toasted to every late night, every ignored warning, every smug lie that led here. Some exits deserve a blaze of glory. You're the real heroes out there in the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the office Keurig might skip your next cup.